Fella, how are you?
I know you were expecting to see a much older fellow, weren't you?
Ron, although you're 75, you look like a man of 20 years your junior.
Well, yeah. I thought you were going to say 20 then. I thought, I'll have that. Yeah, that'll do me. Yeah.
Before we get into the interview, how's life treating you? You're looking great. You're looking $1 million.
Yeah, it's good. Life's good.
Yeah.
I've always enjoyed life. I've been lucky. As I said, I left school when I was 15, and I've never worked since. I've just had a way of life that's been enjoyable. I've done things that I would have done for nothing anyway. So, and to get paid and taken around the world and been to some of the places I've been and all paid for by other people, I consider myself very lucky.
And can I just say, as a footnote to this, you've always been there whenever I've texted you, whenever I've wanted an interview. You've always given up your time to me for free. And absolutely, thanks, mate. But we're going to start at the beginning. Your dad, Fred, bit of a blue nose. Well, there's always been a kind of, was Ron born in Liverpool or Birmingham? You start the story.
I was born in Liverpool. My mother's from Liverpool. My dad was from Birmingham. I lived there for 2 days. Got fed up with the neighbours. They kept nicking me pram, so we moved to Birmingham. But I spent an awful lot of time, school holidays and all that, up on Merseyside. In fact, my uncle used to have a dairy in Goodison Road, and I used to help deliver the milk to some of the what were then Everton players of the 50s and that.
What kind of players were they? Can you remember any of the names there?
Yeah, there was a centre half called Tom.
Well, first schoolboy error there, a little bit like Colo Torre when he passed the ball across his goal line.
Yeah.
You were saying Browne would have given me the marching orders there for that big fella.
If you'd have been interviewing Cloughie now, you'd have been on your way. Hey, up it.
Was he that strict?
He was strict. He was. Yeah. It depended what mood he came in. I mean, I loved him. I got on great with him and had some fair old tussles with him. He used to make me laugh. I couldn't stop laughing at him half the time. But yeah, for me, people talk about the all-time greats. He's certainly, in my time, he was the greatest manager. I think it's the greatest British manager I competed against anyway.
How difficult was he? Because you had quite a few, I wouldn't say set twos, but you must have had one or two shenanigans with Cloughie.
Not really, no. I tell you what, when I was at West Brom, I got on great with him.
Yeah.
Then when I went to Manchester United, apart from business, he totally blanked me. Wouldn't come and have a drink afterwards. But that wasn't just me, that was everybody. Mm-hmm. It was something he had this thing against the big clubs, Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal. He had this, if you like, a siege mentality. When I left United, 2 weeks after I left United, I bumped into him at the City Ground, Nottingham. I was doing a game for television. And the first thing he said to me was, "Hey, come on, let's go and have a drink." And one of my mates said, "Well, what about the previous 6 years?" I said, "Well, that's Cloughie. It wasn't me. It was the very fact that it was Manchester United. He had this, if you like, siege mentality against."
And he seemed to have that with Leeds United and any big type of club. Let's talk briefly before we go back to the dairy on Goodison. When you were at Albion, I remember you telling me a while ago, a situation with Cloughie and the dugouts.
Oh, yeah.
Brian had his special dugout, didn't he?
Well, yeah, it rebounded on me years later, but what it was, when you used to play at the City Ground, the visiting dugout, the tunnel was right down the end, right down in one corner where the teams came out. The visitors' dugout was to the left of that. Brian used to have his own dugout right on the halfway line. Yeah. Subsequently, you might as well have been sat on a boat in the Trent watching the match. You're that far away. And I remember commenting one day after we'd played them there about it, and it's Peter Taylor actually burst out laughing. He said, "Well, you know what that's for, don't you?" A bit later on in the season, we played them back at the Hawthorns, and the Hawthorns then, the main stand was being rebuilt. So, and only by the time we played them, only one half of the ground had been built, one half of the stand, and that included the home team dugout. So what they did on the other side of the tunnel, where the teams came out, they put a temporary dugout for the visitors. Day of the match, I went in, and I said to the ground, "See that dugout? Take it and put it right in that far corner, amongst all those JCBs and diggers and all sorts, and it was bucketing down with rain. And, fortunately we beat them 2-1 as well. But as I'm all stood in the dry in decent suit and overcoat, and they come tramping up through tyre tracks and all sorts, and I just nodded and went, "It's all right down there, isn't it?" Then I cleared off. Funnily enough, years later when I did that, when I went to Forest, I actually, because I'd only ever been to Forest as a visitor, when I walked along, the first day I went there with the Arsenal match, when I was manager, when on my first home debut, I was walking along that front there and I saw the dugout, and remembering that they'd only had one dugout, jumped in there. Well, I jumped into the Arsenal dugout, hadn't I? But they'd been forced to put 2 dugouts on the halfway line as a sort of concession to the Premiership rules. So it rebounded on me a little bit there, but caused a few laughs anyway.
And it certainly did, because the world's press was there for Big Ron coming to almost save Forest, because they were in a precarious situation, wasn't they?
In a precarious situation?
Well, they were doomed.
Yeah, the Titanic had more chance of staying up. My standard line on that is, if we had 16 games to play, if we could have averaged 4 points a game, we might have had a chance. But we didn't do bad. We got 17 points from the remaining 16 games, but we were so far adrift.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I went there, I think we were at least 10 points adrift, which, with 16 games to play, takes some making up.
And the Arsenal bench that day consisted of, I believe, Dennis Bergkamp and Nelson Vivas, didn't it?
When I looked up, I saw Overmars, Bergkamp, Nelson Vivas, and I thought, how can we be bottom of the league with these in our team? But as fortunately for us, they weren't. They were in the opposition.
Yeah. So let's go back to Goodison and the dairy, and say you used to go up there. You was part living in Birmingham, part up there in Liverpool.
School holidays.
School holidays.
Used to go up there, and I used to help my uncle with and my cousin with the dairy, and we'd pull hand carts around all the streets around by Goodison, dropping milk off to people, and and as I say, in that there was about three Liverpool players I can remember. One was Tommy Jones, the centre half. Mm-hmm. Another was a guy in midfield, left half, called Cyril Lello. And the other was a legendary goalkeeper at a pub just round the corner called Ted Sager.
Okay.
Who he might even, maybe Southall's beat him to it now, but I think he might have had the record number of appearances ever for at the time. Anyway, Everton. So I spent a lot of time up there. Didn't have any particular affinity to any of the clubs.
Yeah.
If I went to watch a game, I remember I spent a lot of time up there in the '66 World Cup, because I watched that group a lot when Brazil and Hungary were up there. But no, I didn't have any particular affinity to either Everton or Liverpool. Probably, I liked a lot of clubs, but my main club as a kid was probably the Villa. Yeah. Well, it was the Villa.
Yeah.
Because one week, typical day, we'd play for the school in the morning. Mm-hmm. And then, the first football match I ever saw was at St Andrews, and it was Blues versus Villa. And the only 2 players I can remember, the 2 goalkeepers, which was Gil Merrick, of course, in Blues goal, and a fella called Alan Wakeman was in goal for Villa. So we'd spread. We'd watch Blues one week, and then we'd go, if we played, and then we go and watch next week. We go and watch the Villa play, and normally it's a day out when the Villa played. It was to watch them play. That was in the days when they had people like Danny Blanchflower, who was a fabulous player. When the game had finished, we'd straight over the top, up the road to Perry Bar, and watch the Brumbies Speedway for the night.
Are you still a Speedway fan?
No. But then it was. Yeah. It was. I mean, they used to get 25,000-30,000 gates at the Speedway. Blimey. People like an Australian guy who was the glamour boy, Graham Warren. Stan Dell was the captain, I remember him. Wilbur Lamro, an American rider. And then later on they had people like Alan Hunt and people like that. But the big hero was Graham Warren. Big blonde Australian. Yeah. And
growing up in the Midway, Lee Hall, you went to Lee Hall School, didn't you, Ron? And is that how you got? You get spotted by the Villa?
No, I went to Lee Village School.
Yeah.
And we always had we had good sports masters. for a while, we were probably the best school could well have been the best school in the area, in Birmingham or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Both at football and cricket.
Yeah.
You know, I used to play cricket, and I remember us getting to the Docker Shield and all that. But what happened? I played for the district, Saltley Boys, then the county team, Birmingham and district, and you know there were always scouts at games.
Mm-hmm.
And the first club I got approached by Albion came in for me. I remember Albion coming, Liverpool, Wolves. Funnily enough, Villa. I can't remember Villa making an approach when I was 15 or whatever. So I went to Wolves. On the ground side, when Wolves along with Man U,
Yeah.
were the best two teams in the country, and they both had great youth policies. And in those days, every club had like 6 or 7 teams.
Mm-hmm.
And at one stage, I can remember when I was at Wolves, the goalkeepers was Bert Williams, bless his heart,
Yeah.
who's just passed away, Nigel Sims, a goalkeeper called Noel Dwyer, who was a fantastic keeper, and Jeff Sidebottom, who later went to Villa, and that was the strength of the club, you know.
Yeah.
And so I was there for about 18 months, including when they played in all those epic floodlight matches. Spartak, but of course Hamburg, which any Wolves fan will tell you is probably the greatest, the most memorable game in their history, and in many ways was responsible for Wolves' advent into the floodlight matches. Was a big factor in the European Cup being introduced. And while I was there, I used to know a guy who played for the Villa called Herbie Smith, right winger, who lived not far from me, and he kept saying, "Why don't you leave there and come to join us?"
Yeah.
And subsequently, there was some. Yeah, I left Wolves, went and played for about 6 months in the Birmingham Works League for the BSA. And I might still be the youngest player ever to represent the Birmingham Works League. I was 16 when I played, and it was a men's league, you know, and there was 24 divisions, I think.
Yeah.
And then when I was 17, they wanted me to stay amateur. The guy that ran the Birmingham Works League, Tommy Lee, he said, "If you stay amateur, I'll guarantee you get an England amateur cap."
All right.
But, you know, I went and signed part-time then for the Villa. Which, in a way, I wish I'd never done. I wish I'd never signed part-time now, but my dad said, if you're going to go there, you know, they'd found me a job at the BSA. And so I was doing an engineering apprenticeship as well. Looking back, hindsight, I probably wish then that I'd gone full-time at the Villa. Because I was definitely one of the better youngsters they had at the time. But because I was only training 2 nights a week and all that, I wasn't really in the picture as much as the others. And then subsequently a new manager came in, and he got rid of everybody, I think. Joe Mercer, I think he got rid of everybody. I remember it being on the Birmingham Mail. It was like an Al-Qaeda wanted list. There was about 15 of us all on the head and shoulders pictures. Had a few offers to go elsewhere. A few clubs came in, and then Arthur Turner came in for me. Arthur Turner had been a top manager at Birmingham. Probably Birmingham's most successful ever manager.
Yeah.
I think they went to cup final, semi-final, and finished 6th in the top division.
Yes, correct.
Which I think is still there. Anyway, he came in for me and took me to Oxford. And I honestly thought I'd go to Oxford for 12 months, play my way back in and get a move to a big club. And I stayed there 12 years, which it was terrific, really, because something was always happening. You know, we got promotion. He organised the side. He took a lot of young lads from the Midlands. We went full-time. We got into the Football League, which was hard to do then because you had to get voted in.
Yep.
Got us into the Football League, and then within a couple of seasons we got promoted. We had great cup runs. We went to we were the first team to go to the 6th round of the cup from that division, having played. We played Blackburn Rovers in the 5th round, who were top of what is now the Premiership. You know, it'd be like somebody from the 4th Division now playing Manchester City or somebody like that. Yeah, they had loads of internationals. 2 weeks earlier, I think they'd just gone to Upton Park and beaten West Ham. You know, the West Ham of Hurst, Peters and Moore.
Some team.
They'd beaten them 8. You know, so they come into playoffs and we battered them. We beat them 3-1. And it's quite funny, really. I was captain. And then early on, I challenged Fred Pickering. In fact, it might be Fred Pickering's last game for Blackburn before he went to Everton, I think. And I remember running into him and knocking him down. And I honestly thought he looked frightened. And I said to the boys, I remember saying to the rest of them, hey, they don't fancy it. And we beat them 3-1. And then in the 6th round, we got beaten by Preston, who went on to the final. We got beaten by Preston by the biggest offside goal you've ever seen in your life. But there you go. But it was, but that was great. There was always something happening, and subsequently, you know, we went from the 4th Division as it was then, and into the 2nd Division in about 4 seasons, something like that.
I think you were the first captain ever to have done that in the history of football, from the Southern League through to that level of football.
Yeah. And when I left, I think we were about 4th in the league. You know, one step away from the top division at the time. But I'd always, when I was there as well, when I was at Oxford, one of the things that kept me there, I had a very good job outside the game. I was a full-time player, but I worked for a builder's merchants training as a sales representative for them, which I was probably going to go into. I thought I was going to go into when you finished, because, you know, we made good money, but nothing. You know, it wasn't anything like the sums that have since been made. Nothing. In fact, I remember when I was at West Brom the second time, talking to Nobby Stiles, who'd won. We're talking about what wages we were on in '68, I think it was. And he'd just won the European Cup and the World Cup. And on a basic wage, I was on £2 a week more than him. I think his bonuses might have been a bit better, like, but yeah. So there wasn't that great differential in what division you played in then. Although the maximum wage had been raised, it had been abolished. It still wasn't. You know, there still wasn't a great differential between players' wages at the top level and players' wages lower down.
In them days, were you paid the same in the summer and the winter? Had that come in by then?
No. I'm trying to think. When I first went there, we weren't. But,
because out of playing season, players wasn't paid the same as, were they?
No. I mean, invariably, and the close season always seemed long as well. Because we invariably used to get jobs.
Yeah.
And our gang all went and worked for Wolseley's Ice Cream. We all went just delivering. We used to be there. It was hilarious. About 6 of us all went for Wolseley's, not selling on the streets but just going round. I think we had, me and my mate, another Birmingham lad, Tony Jones. Our round was we had to go and stock up all the colleges and stuff like that, you know, and 1 or 2 of the nuclear power stations at Harwell, I remember. We used to laugh. We had a laugh. You know, we used to get there right early, get it done, and go and play tennis all afternoon. Or if we're in one area where the kids come out of school, we used to give them all the free ice cream. Yeah.
And you played over 500 games, didn't you, for Oxford during your career?
Yeah.
You played with your brother. Your brother Graham was there at Oxford with you as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's still the record goal scorer at Oxford, actually, Graham. I think I've got the record number of appearances, and Graham's got the record number of goals. But as I say, it was great. Because Oxford was a great place to live.
Yeah.
There was 1 or 2 clubs came in for me. I think Everton came in at one time, Man City, and Newcastle. I think was the other. Certainly, I can remember them being involved. But you know, I was well settled, and I wasn't over bothered about moving. And then one pre-season I went back, and I didn't have quite the same appetite for the game. Not for the game. That was the first time I fancied a change. Because when you go back in pre-season, you've got to be optimistic.
Yeah.
And all right, I was still I say running the show, still captain. And then within a month, I had 4 offers come in. One was to go player manager at Reading, player manager at Crewe. John Bond wanted me to go to Bournemouth with him. Mm-hmm. He wanted me to be the senior player there because he'd just taken over. He got like Ted McDougall and a few more. In fact, shortly afterwards, I remember them playing against Villa in front of 50,000 in the old third division. And then a guy named John Nash, who was chairman of Kettering Town, I'd met him over the past because he was chairman of the old Southern League as well, asked me to go and see him, and I said, I'm really not, I really don't want to do that. If I'm going to do it, I'll do it. He said, well, just come and see me. And he was that persuasive that on the way home I stopped, because we didn't have mobiles then. Stopped at I always remember it being a call box in Bedford. Yeah. And I stopped there and rang my dad. He said, well, you know, if you don't have a go, you might never know. So I took the job when I wasn't even thinking of doing that. I'd also been offered the sales manager's job at this company I was working for. But I thought, go on, I'll have a go. And that was the start of it. Yeah.
What age was you then, Ron, when you went into management?
I would be...
kind of early 30s?
31, I think. 31 or 32. Because one week I played at West Ham. And then the next week I was playing at... it wasn't Milton Keynes. What was it called? Bletchley. They were called Bletchley, weren't Milton Keynes? Bletchley. The next week I was playing at Bletchley against Bletchley, who later became Milton Keynes. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking to myself, blimey, it was easier against West Ham last week than it is against these, like, you know. And because then Kettering there were 2 divisions of the league. Kettering were halfway up in what was the 2nd division of the Southern League, so to speak. And I'd get 2 points for a win it was then. And I think we took 29 points from the last 30 and won the league. Yeah. Got promotion. I remember saying to the chairman, you know, if let me buy one player. And I bought a kid from Oxford, Roy Clayton, who I'd seen as a very good young player at Oxford. And we could win this league as well. Mm-hmm. And we did. We won the non-league. We won the... In today's climate, we'd have gone straight into the Football League. Yeah. But you had to be voted in, and I'd actually took Arthur Turner with me, who'd been my manager for most of the while at Oxford. I took him as like an ambassador, and he went around canvassing the clubs to try and get selected, and we just missed out. I think we missed out by 1 vote. Otherwise, we'd have gone in. I can remember that season we were competing in March for 9 different trophies. Blimey. We beat in the cup there, the Northamptonshire Senior Cup. We beat both Northampton and Peterborough. I mean, we had a good side. Had a few good pros in the team, and a couple of years there we were always knocking on the door, and then Cambridge came in and made me an offer. Cambridge wanted me to go player manager, but Kettering, there was a bit of friction, and Kettering wouldn't release me playing contract. So I just went as manager in the end, and for a couple of years, and then I started playing again in the reserves. When I was about,
right?
Yeah. Just playing with having a game with the kids in the afternoon, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Yeah.
And won the 4th division title, didn't you, at Cambridge?
Yeah, we won the 4th division title. And when I left, I think we were top or 2nd of the 3rd division. They went up that season when I went to Albion. Well, that was great. We had a great bunch of lads, great spirit. And the irony of it all was, I was, all through my playing career, all through my managerial career mainly, I've been fortunate enough to have wingers. Yeah. At Cambridge, we could never get wingers. For whatever reason, we could never get a good winger. And yet we scored more goals than any team in the country. I kept thinking, I wish we could get some wingers in. And then I kept looking at the scores, and I think, I'm not too sure I'm right there. We had some young lads, Alan Biley, who later went for decent money.
Yeah, remember him.
Big centre half, Steve Fallon, little midfield player called Stephen Spriggs, and I signed the 3 of them in a week. They had a 250 quid each signing on fee. Yeah. and that was when people ask you who your best buys, that would come into it. And I also took a superb professional from Norwich, a kid called Dave Stringer, who'd been captain of Norwich. And
yeah, I remember him as well.
How Dave came, he was like the old head in our team. He was brilliant, great pro. Brendan Batson was there, and Brendan, to be fair, Brendan was a bit hit and miss. He'd come from the Arsenal, weren't sure whether he was a centre half, weren't sure whether he was a midfield player, and subsequently I started playing him at right back. And there was no question, he had a bit of an attitude problem when I first went there.
Yeah.
And we sorted that out, and within 3 months of me giving him the biggest rocket of his life, I'd made him captain. So yeah, we had a good side. We could score a lot of goals. We had some, and I'd insisted we had a great. Ironically enough, we had a superb pitch, and it was made to measure for playing quick passing football.
Yeah.
The last time I went there was with Sheffield Wednesday to play against John Beck's Cambridge
yeah,
United.
they played a lot of football, didn't they?
The first thing I did was look at the pitch, and I couldn't understand why the corner flags were heavily sanded. And they kept booting the ball into the corner flags and whatever. But that was great. And then, ironically enough, Elton John wanted me to go to Watford as manager. They were in the same division at the time.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's only a sideways move, where I never seriously considered it, although he wrote for permission to interview, just, offer me the job. And Graham Taylor, around about the same time, I think, had been offered the West Brom job and didn't fancy it. And about 4 months later, I'm manager at West Brom and he's manager at Watford.
What a twist of fate.
Yeah.
Did you then follow Graham into the Villa job?
No.
Now,
what happened with that? Graham got the England job straight after the World Cup, didn't he, in 1990, wasn't it? Yeah, when Bob. Yeah. Graham came to see me. I was at Sheffield Wednesday at the time. Graham came to see me to ask me. He said he wanted me to take over at the Villa.
Yeah.
And we just got relegated. How we got relegated, we had 43 points and played some great stuff and got relegated last kick of the season. And I said, I can't leave Sheffield now.
Yeah.
I can't, not the situation we're in. I've called all the lads in together and I've said, look, we're going to stick this one out and we're going to go bounce straight back up. Which we did. Mm-hmm. We bounced up. We won. Well, we didn't win the league. We should have done. We were the best team in it. But we also went to Wembley and beat Man United in the League Cup final, which was Sheffield's only major trophy for like 200 years or something.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm in Sheffield, everybody says that's the best day of our lives ever. But the end of that season, Doug came in and offered me the job again, and it was a bit heart-wrenching because the day I was taking it, the day it was announced, I was on an open-top bus going through Sheffield and wasn't...
How do you cope with that? Because, football fans would look and they say, oh, he's on the top, but then he's left us.
They didn't know I'd left, and it'd just been rumoured. Mm-hmm. And I actually agreed to stay.
Yeah.
To be fair, I got battered that day by the fans, the board and this, and I said, OK, I'll stay.
Yeah. And
then over the weekend, Villa came back in again and made me another offer, and I thought, well, I've got to go. I'd had about 3 or 4 chances to manage Villa, and I thought, if I don't go now, and I thought, well, I'm leaving Sheffield in good hands. I'd more or less canvassed for Trevor Francis to get the manager's job there, because they had a very good team and some good lads, good attitudes. People like Nigel Pearson, who is now doing well as a manager. Yeah, he was a great captain for them, great leader. So they had a lot of good lads there, and I thought, well, club's in good shape now. Nobody can accuse me now. They did, but that's the way I look at the world.
Well, Lot Futton will go back to West Bromwich Albion and Manchester United, but Villa has always been your club. Villa, I mean, my allegiance, blue and white, Birmingham City, but Aston Villa are a magnificent football club of tremendous standing. Yeah. It's your home city. It's your own, that you couldn't really turn that job down. Really,
not at the time. Not at the time. And funnily enough, just before the end of that season, our reserves, because we won a lot of stuff that year. We won we got promotion. We won the League Cup. Our reserves won the Central League, which was a great league in those days. I think our youth team won the FA Youth Cup. And I remember us playing Villa Reserves and Joe Vengler, so I'd known for many years. I knew Joe I met him at the European Championships in 1980. And in fact, my father used to send his son memorabilia from Manchester United. And he'd taken some stick. There was that horrendous headline in the Birmingham Mail, front page, "Go Joe, for God's sake go," something like that.
Yeah.
I'd been at the game, actually. They got beat 5 by Manchester City. And he was talking to me, and I said, "Joe, don't quit. Don't quit. If you want to stay at the Villa, you don't quit. If he wants to get rid of you, fine.
Yeah.
Then you can't have it. But don't walk out on him." And I'm not sure what happened at the end, but, you know, they were going to get rid of him. I went in then, yeah.
And famously, it was the only time you played Birmingham City in the League Cup. Birmingham's manager would have been Barry.
No.
Was it Barry?
Terry
Was Terry still there?
Terry was manager, wasn't he? Terry was manager, yeah. Terry was still manager.
Was it about 93 then, wasn't it?
Yeah, we won it.
Was that 93 the year you won the... Oh, yeah.
Terry was manager.
Back end of Terry Cooper then.
Yeah. Terry's a good pal of mine. I see him a lot in Tenerife.
Yeah.
And in fact, we had a good social scene then. There was Terry and his wife Rose. Ozzy was at the Albion, and he lived just round the corner from us here.
Right.
So Ozzy and his missus used to come round, and myself and my wife, and we used to have some good little social occasions.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like that now, but I can remember when I was here at first with West Brom.
Yeah.
Like, one of my best mates was Jim Smith, the Blues manager.
Yeah.
And there used to be a great camaraderie. I always thought, particularly the first time round, I thought the Midlands, the footballing environment was terrific.
Yeah.
Because we all had teams in the top division, and all the managers, by and large, like, got on great together. Like Barney and John and Richie Barker would come over from Wolverhampton, Gordon Milne from Coventry and all that. And we'd have social times together.
Yeah.
I don't think that quite happened. Well, it doesn't happen that much now anyway. I know it doesn't. Maybe with the advent of foreign managers and whatever, I don't know. In fact, funnily enough, Cloughie would sometimes come to press dues. Not very often, but sometimes you'd have a laugh with him. The one that we could never get out, who would never come, never mix with, it was Ron Sanders.
Yeah.
I mean, and I played for Ron. Ron was manager of Oxford for a short time when I was there. And I got on quite well with him when I was his captain. Mm-hmm. But it's totally different when he was a manager. He didn't want to, all that. He didn't want to know anybody. Which was a pity, really, because, he was a very, very good manager, very successful.
Very different, though, to both yourself and Jim Smith. I would imagine, well, looking at your football teams, you and Jim played some great football. You were bubbly characters. You appeared to both like the high life, the champagne kind of lifestyle. I'm guessing Ron Saunders was the polar opposite to you.
Yeah. His public persona wasn't that. Mm-hmm. But I know people that, I think he did. I was reading an article the other day by somebody. I tell you, it was Dave Matthews, the old kitman at West Brom, great lad.
Yeah.
And he was saying he had to make sure that because Roman, of course, managed all the clubs, didn't he?
Yes, he did, yeah.
He had to make sure he got his special cigars and stuff for him, like,
Right.
Different people have different ways. I mean, Cloughie celebrated winning a cup once by going home and putting the cup on the television and having some fish and chips. We never used to celebrate like that.
How did you celebrate when you won it, Ron?
Well, we stayed in London with and made sure everybody... I always remember Noel Campbell. So it was a great character. I always remember having a chat with him once when I was at West Brom. And he'd been at Manchester United when they'd won things and that. And he said, make sure when you win something, you enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I've always tried to do that. And funnily enough, I've always tried to do it with my teams to make sure that, like, when we went with Sheffield Wednesday, we went 2 or 3 days before, we made an event of it. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's any coincidence. Sheffield Wednesday, after that, went to Wembley about three or four times in quick succession. We did it at the Villa. You know, all right, if you Man United now or Liverpool in the past, they've been there that many times that it's not an everyday thing, but when a club's not been somewhere, you've got to make it special, and you got to make the players feel special and the families and everybody in the club. I took everybody in the club, you know, made sure one way or the other they were involved.
And Albion, 1978, I think you took over the reins at the Baggies.
Yeah.
The first English club to ever go to China and play a game. That must have been an experience.
It was an experience. China then, I've got to tell you, was totally different to what China is now. I mean, first of all, everybody had blue boiler suits on, men and women.
Yeah.
It was very much a communist type of thing, and they reckon 1 in 5 was a party member.
Yeah.
I remember us going, it was hard at the time, but we've had some laughs about it since, because the television company came with us and filmed it, and I mean, the biggest highlight for the television was John Truick, you know, when they said about the Great Wall, he made the comment, when you've seen one wall, you've seen another, you've seen them all. Like, when they asked me, I said, seen the Great Wall? I said I was bending free kicks around it at one stage. That was the sort of thing. But when we had this guy with us, a party member, who was very, very anti what we represented. And I've said to the lads, I said, I'll give him a week. I'll have him smoking cigars, drinking champagne. And the fella, when we left, I think we left, not Shanghai, was it? Canton or somewhere. When we left, he almost burst into tears. And he was like one of them right hard villain types that you see in the Bond movies. Yeah. But it was an experience. It wasn't over pleasurable, but it was an experience. It was hard work, really. Yeah. Because most of the lads, we'd had a decent season. We qualified for Europe. And most of the lads were, I always remember Robbo saying, why can't we be in Alicante? But, we had a good bunch of lads, so we got by on that. It was a different type of bonding. Yeah.
And you had a great team, didn't you, there at the Albion?
Do you know
arguably Albion's best ever side, but certainly that I've seen. The 50s before, forget that, it was before my time.
Team in the 50s.
Yeah, absolutely. The Ronnie Allen side.
It was a terrific side. Ray Barlow was a great player, and people like that. Mm-hmm. But it was... I'll make this statement now. But for the freeze-up of 78, 79, we'd have won the league. Yeah. We'd have been out of sight by throughout the December, up until the time we stopped playing in January, we could have beaten any team in Europe. Yeah. I'm convinced of that. I mean, we beat a very good Valencia side. We went to Highbury, beat Arsenal when Arsenal had just beaten Spurs 5-1. We went to Man U and beat them 5. And we gave a performance on New Year's Day against Bristol City on the ice pitch, which to me was as good a performance as any football team could produce. Yeah. With the conditions as they were. And we would have gone on, but then the season stopped for us, and we just didn't play for, it must have been 5 weeks, and ironically enough, Liverpool, who got under soil heating and hadn't been affected by the weather so much, Liverpool came past us, got a little lead, and ironically enough, our first game was at Anfield. And there was no question, we played a few friendlies, but we were rusty. And we were 2 down. We got back in the game late on, but we never caught them after that. And I think we played, in the March, it left us playing something like 11 games in 25 days. Yeah. With not the sort of squads they have now. You know, our idea of rotating was to leave one out and put one in. Yeah. As you say, you never had the squads. I mean, I think Villa, when they won the league, won it with about 14 players, didn't they, in 81? Yeah. Times were very different then. Players and rotations, I'm guessing players don't like to be rotated. You can say they're rested, they're dropped, however you want to wrap it up. Football players, by and large, want to play every game, don't they? Oh, but yeah. I think they have a different understanding of it now. Yeah. Particularly with the European games and international matches. But I remember having a chat. Peter Crouch went to Liverpool, and couldn't buy a goal. And all of a sudden he played in one game and scored 2. He's off the mark. And he got left out in the next game. And I always remember talking to Ian Rush, who I think is the best, certainly with Shearer, the best 2 centre forwards in my time, out and out centre forwards. He said, I said, what would you have done if you'd have scored 2 goals and got dropped? He said, I'd have knocked the door down on the manager's office.
Yeah.
So I think I think sometimes they do tend to, because the other thing they do, players, like you say, players do prefer to play than train. Right. You tell a player you're leaving him out to keep him from being tired. It makes players feel tired.
Yeah.
I found that when I was in Spain, I found I can remember us playing John Tuchek's team, Sociedad, who played a game in midweek, and we were a European game actually, and I remember us talking, and the lads said, like, they've played 2 games this week.
Yeah.
And I'm going, well, just get and play a high tempo and tire them out. All right, they've got more and more used to it, I think, abroad now, but I think that's where he first came in, where players from abroad thought that, it was a heavy schedule. I will say this, the players from South America aren't like that.
All right.
Argentinians are as hard as they come. And the hardest, and it's a fallacy, the hardest working, hardest training, hardest playing are Brazilians.
All right.
Everybody thinks of Brazil as the Samba boys.
Yeah.
Brazilians train very, very hard, play very hard, and play an awful lot more games than anybody else. We had a midfield player in Madrid called Donato, who I think had a fortnight's break in 4 years.
Blimey.
Just played. He'd played in Brazil where their season finished, come over and played in Spain, and then, it was nothing to him, just playing. Yeah. So I do think to a certain extent, you can put it in their mind, if you're tired. You don't tell players they're tired. You don't give them an excuse to think they're tired.
Yeah.
What you do, you say, hey, well done, you've got another game coming up this week, get ready for it.
Now, at the Albion, we're still going to stay in Albion waters here for a short time. Laurie Cunningham, what a player, Laurie. You come out with that famous quote about, well, you tell us about Laurie Cunningham and snow.
Laurie Cunningham was brilliant. I mean, I described him as saying he could run on snow and not even make an indent in it. He was his balance and whatever, and he's a superb player. People have asked me the best player I've ever worked with, and I've always gone Robbo.
Yeah.
But for a period in that particular season, Laurie was on a par. He never reached his full potential. I thought England wasted him.
Yep.
I remember seeing him play for England one day, and I said, what are you doing getting the ball and passing it? When do you go at people?
Yeah.
He said, that's what the manager wants. I said, well, tell him that you're a dribbler. You run with the ball. And, of course, he had to move to Real Madrid, where he got injured, and that might have worked against him. I think, I'm not too sure. No, he wasn't the first black player to play for Real Madrid, because I think Didi did from Brazil. But and there was a little bit of funny stuff there, apparently, but he got injured, and I don't think, from what I can gather, he got the best treatment.
Yeah.
And subsequently, he never, ever really recovered from that. I took him back to Manchester United for a short while on loan, and he did okay for us, and then should have played in the cup final against Brighton and dropped out with an injury before the game. And then I went over to Madrid to do some of the business I got left from concern me when I'd left. Met Laurie, who'd moved from Real Madrid to Rayo Vallecano, and they just won promotion. And we went to a game at the Bernabeu, and he said, I'll come in next year and show them what they missed. A month later, I get a phone call to say about the car crash. But a good lad as well, smashing lad, tremendous player.
Because there was going to be a film about you. But I think James Corden was going to play. It was about you and Laurie Cunningham. There was some connection. I remember a few years ago. I don't think he'd ever come off. But
I don't think he has, because I remember saying bumping into James Corden.
Yeah.
Who told me that. He said that I'll be in touch because they want me to play you. I said we'll have to have facelift and get yourself fit. Anyway, no, that hasn't. To my that never.
Shame, because what a great player, and sadly taken far too shortly away from us. SRBMedia.com. From West Bromwich Albion, the move. no one can ever turn it down. You were 42 years of age.
Yeah.
You had the keys to the greatest football club in the world, on the planet. And I don't care who you support, where you're from, Manchester United has always had that ring to it. So you're at Man United, Ron. Massive move for you. As I've said, no one turns down that great club.
No, I mean, it's, in actual fact, when I went to United, I was actually leaving a better team than the one I was taking over. Because people that have only got involved with football since the advent of Sky and the Premiership think that Manchester United have been which they have in this particular era, have been the all-time conquerors of everything. It was a bit different back in the day then. I mean, I think United had only qualified, they won the European Cup in 68. I went in 81. I think they'd only qualified for Europe maybe twice in a league position.
Yep.
And in actual fact, a few years earlier, just got relegated to the second division. People probably can't believe that.
1974.
Yeah. So I went. My premise when I went in there, and I told the chairman, Martin Edwards, who is still the best chairman I've ever worked for. I told him, I said, the aim has got to be to make United a European team again, because they were synonymous with Europe. And to that extent, we succeeded. I mean, the 5 full seasons I was there, we never out the top 4. If you're in the top 4 nowadays, I remember talking to Harry Redknapp when they just finished 4th, I think, at Tottenham, and everybody was lauding him. And Harry's a good mate of mine. I remember saying to Harry, I've just got the sack for dropping down to 4th. Oh, yeah, you go. But anyway, it was good, and add to that, we won the cup a couple of times at a time when the FA Cup was everybody's dream. Everybody, as a player, as a kid, as a manager, as a fan, wanted to win the FA Cup, and that was your dream when you came into the game. And I was lucky enough to go to Wembley a few times, and I was lucky enough to win the FA Cup a couple of times, which I was proud of. I was thrilled. I loved it. I love the FA Cup. I think we've devalued a great competition. Yeah. And my take on it, I'd give the 4th place if I was a fan. I'd sooner my team won the FA Cup than finish 4th in the Premiership. And if they had anything to do with it, I'd give the 4th place, the 4th European Cup place, to the team that wins the FA Cup. And then all of a sudden you wouldn't find clubs playing weekend sides then. And it's straight away the FA Cup would get all its glamour back again.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's lost that. The FA Cup was given a lid to keep that special. Yeah. Because it is the most special tournament in the world. It's the oldest football tournament in the world. And I think the FA... Is there and was there a rule in football where, as a manager, you should always pick your strongest team in any game that you play? Yeah,
there was that was supposed to be the idea. They've got round that to a certain extent now by this naming 25-man squads.
Yeah, sure.
So they say anybody in that 25-man squad is capable of playing in your first team.
But it isn't.
No,
is it?
No, never in a million years. I mean, I get annoyed when I see teams that have never won anything fielding weekend sides in cup competition. You think, well, I mean, all right, they suffered at the end of it, Birmingham, when they won the League Cup. But whenever I talk to Blues fans, that's the day they remember. Winning that. And I can't. If I was the chairman of a club, unless it was Manchester United or Arsenal or somebody like that who win things, and my manager came in and fielded a reserve side in an early round of a cup competition, I think I'd sack him.
Yeah.
I'd be saying to him, no, we've got to give our fans something, and this club needs a trophy.
I think every fan every fan in England would echo those views. Being a Blue Nose, I don't know any Blues fan that would trade that for still being in the Premier League. It's a day out we remember, and you're in football to win things and to win cups. As you say, you did win 2 FA Cups at Man United. You also tried to sign Trevor Francis, didn't you? And I think you did earlier at the Albion, if memory serves me right. Is that right?
Yeah. Early on, there wasn't a great deal of chance of getting him to the Albion. To be fair, they made quite a good profit, the Albion, and instead of paying it tax, we had to spend it on somebody. And I did try for Trevor with Alf Ramsey was manager, but it was no chance. And I also I also went. He was one of my early targets at Man United, but the board wouldn't sanction it on the terms they wanted because of Trevor's, if you like, his injury situation.
Yeah.
I did eventually sign him for Sheffield Wednesday. Free when he'd left. When he left QPR, where he'd been player manager. So he came to Sheffield. He did very well for us, actually.
Yeah.
The move was great for him because well, I'm saying he didn't have to take part. I think he was available certainly in the first 2 years for 60 games.
Yeah.
So.
Because that was towards the end of Trevor's career.
Yeah.
You famously marked Trevor on his first St Andrews game when he was known as the Tank there at Oxford.
Yeah.
Tell me about that, Ron.
I constantly remind. Well, we had a great record at St Andrews. In fact, St Andrews is my luckiest away ground.
Really?
That or Wembley. I've never lost a football match in my life at St Andrews.
Blimey.
As a player, as a young player, as a schoolboy, I think I played there once for the schoolboys and didn't get beat.
Do you ever fancy managers, Ron, with that record?
I once remember saying that to Trevor. I've won more games here than you have. The nearest we ever got, I think, was when Jim Smith was manager.
Yeah.
And the Albion, we went there and Browne Robson forced an equaliser in about the 95th minute.
Mm.
Yeah, that was the nearest we ever got to being beaten. But yeah, I've always had great results at St Andrews.
You're about the only manager that's ever had great results at St Andrews, Ron.
Yeah.
But United, you had to, or you didn't have to, but Mark Hughes was sold, wasn't he? And reading your book there seemed to be, you were of the opinion that money was ready for you to purchase a player, and the two players that you, if, I'm reading the book and it's all right, of course, and generally it is, two of the greatest central defenders in the British game you would have liked to have paired at Manchester United. Yeah,
we had Terry Butcher, who was at Ipswich. You knew he was leaving Ipswich, 750 grand. When it became inevitable, and I tried to talk Sparky out of going. I thought it's too early for him to go, but he'd had his, people had been in his head, and obviously going to Barcelona. It was too early for him, but nevertheless he went. Now I was led to believe that if he went, and he went for £2 million, which at the time I think was a record. Yeah. I was led to believe I could buy a centre forward with it, and at the centre half we'd identified was Terry Butcher. And then after the World Cup in '86, there was something went on. Chairman told me that the money would have to go to the money was going to the new museum they were building. And I remember saying at a board meeting, if we're one down, we need a big centre half to come up and head it home. I don't think the museum will help us much. But, and then there was a comment passed by one of the others, and I said, well, whoever's manager of the club's not going to worry about having Paul McGrath and Terry Butcher as the centre half for the next 5 years.
How good was Paul McGrath?
Paul McGrath, I think he's the best centre half. He's certainly the best centre half I've seen in the Premiership.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe he was different to Bobby Moore. He reminds me a lot. I always said the best centre half I've ever seen was John Charles.
Yeah.
It was also one of the best three centre forwards. And I think Paul McGrath is the nearest I've seen to him. Yeah, he was magnificent. He really was. And all right, a lot of his problems were well documented.
Yeah.
But what I do know is, when he played, he didn't half play well.
Did he train a lot? Because there was always that when he was at the Villa.
No, I didn't.
Would I be right and fair in saying, what you do with a player, you manage a player?
Yeah.
If the player's, got, injured knees or whatever, or so on, or whatever problems that the player has got off the pitch, you as a manager, it's your job to manage that player. And I think you've done it absolutely fantastically well.
Well, what we did with Paul McGrath, he would train.
Yeah.
He would, no question. If you said Paul McGrath, I want you to train, he'd train.
Yeah.
But you knew you ran the risk of aggravating. His knees were shot at,
yeah,
really bad. Jim Walker, the physio at the Villa, was magnificent with him. He knew just how to deal with him and how to do it. And Jim and I talked a lot about it, what we should do with him, what we shouldn't, and we made up our mind. Yeah, if we've got him for games, that is a bonus. Now, he played in the first 4 years of the Premiership. I think he missed 2 games.
Yeah.
Something like that, missed 2 games. And they weren't through injury, by the way. That was when he did a couple of his famous non-shows. But only a couple of times. And
how did you get on as a manager with that, Ron? Again, if I was the manager and it was a player like Paul McGrath, I'd put my arm round his... And again, manage him. Well, that's and get the max out of it.
That's what you do. I mean, don't forget, I brought Paul over as a kid from St Patrick's to Manchester United, so maybe I'd have got a little bit of a special rapport with him. But hey, if he didn't do what he was supposed to do, he weren't all preferential treatment. Everybody in the camp knew that his used to us was playing, and I don't remember any players ever complain and say, "Well, he gets away." He didn't get away with it.
Yeah.
He used to have to come in for training. But he didn't train. He just went in the gym, did a bit of light pedal work on a bike, exercises, and that was it. Occasionally, very occasionally, if we were doing set situations, I'd bring him out for that.
Yeah, sure.
Or if we needed anything tactical, that sort of thing. He would dearly have loved to have played five-a-side with the rest of the lads. Yeah. But unfortunately, I made him referee them while I played. Yeah.
Did you always win your team? Because Bill Shankly, when he was the manager of Liverpool, he wouldn't. It'd be dark sometimes, but because he always had to win the game.
No, it was never dark. We'd won it before then. I like all training to be high intensity.
Yeah.
In fact, I've heard a lot about what both Wenger and Mourinho do, and a lot of particularly what I've heard Mourinho does, is not too dissimilar to what we used to do. Everything was. I didn't like long-winded sessions.
Yeah.
I liked bright, breezy, quick.
Yeah.
When I say quick, high intensity. And I wanted the players, and most players wanted to do it. I didn't want players coming in thinking it was a chore to have to train.
Yeah.
I wanted them coming in and being alive and bubbly, and by and large, that's what they were.
The special one, is he? The special one.
Well, you can't knock his record. Wherever he goes... He touches gold dust, and watching his team play the other night is one of the best against Man City. That's one of the best Premiership performances I've seen.
Do you know who gave the team talk?
Well, they said the Scottish physio or something. Yeah. That's a little bit... I've pulled strokes like that in the past. Where I've said to somebody like Jim Paul, the kit man, or whoever, Jim, you tell him. Go on, I'm fed up of telling him. You tell him.
Yeah.
And then it's just a little,
In terms of the way Mourinho is with the press and the way that he's the kind of self-proclaimed, the special one, has he got a little bit of Brian Clough in him, the way that he plays mind games with other people? He seems to get in people's minds and win the game off the pitch before his team go and win it on the pitch for him.
I mean, I was, if he'd have say for argument's sake, I've only met him a couple of times, and I get on quite well with him. But if he'd have started mind games with me, I said, "Hey, little man, shut up." It's mind games.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Fergie started it, but Fergie never used to do it with any of the any of the likes of us, or anything like that.
Yeah.
They'd all, Alex, behave yourself. One of them.
Now, you got on well with Alex, and Alex followed you into Old Trafford. What I read in your book, 1986, the World Cup was a big time for you, and there seemed to be outside influences that probably influenced things in Manchester United that possibly led to your end of days.
I don't know. Maybe not. I think the biggest single factor was we took 7 players to the World Cup.
Yeah.
And 5 of them come back and needed operations. Yeah. And didn't really play. Including Robbo. Robbo, Strack, McGrath. I think it was Silverbeck, the Danish boy.
Yeah.
And Whiteside. Yeah, Whiteside went with the Irish team, and he did. And don't forget, once again, I'll read it, we didn't carry the sort of squads we carry today. if we were bringing, we'd have like 3, apart from the first team, we'd have 3 other senior players or 4. And then you put kids in out the reserves like a Clayton Blackmore or Mark Hughes when he was there. You know, that's how they got in, actually. There weren't we didn't have a double squads where you could replace like for like.
Now, you mentioned earlier Mark Hughes, possibly in your opinion, went to Barcelona a bit, too early in his career. Would you have gone to Barcelona? Well, there was talk of you going to Barcelona. Yeah. Would that have been too early for Big Ron, or...?
I don't know. I really don't know. I was approached by a representative of Barcelona, and we'd just beaten them in the Cup Winners' Cup when they had Maradona and Schuster and, a lot of Spanish internationals.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of talk about me going there. They approached me. I was supposed to have met their representatives later on in Hong Kong when we were out on tour there. And all of a sudden Terry Venables was ringing me up for copies of this and copies of that and whatever. Now, I don't know to this day, but Terry had the same representative as I had.
Yeah.
English representative. Not an agent, but he was an agent, but he weren't my agent, I wasn't Terry's. But I just wonder how much the bloke who's representing me might have thought, I don't run leaving Man U.
Yeah. But
Terry would be handy, so he got 2 nice people in there. I don't know. There's one other thing.
Any team in England, Ron, you would have liked to have managed, but didn't?
I would like to have worked in London.
Yeah.
I never thought so at the time, but maybe that's a bit of a regret. And Tottenham possibly would have been the sort of side that sort of club and that I'd have been suited to.
They've always played with a certain style, haven't they? I somehow, Arsenal are different now with Mr. Wenger, but before with George Graham and the way it was the old boring Arsenal, couldn't see you in an Arsenal dugout, but I could see you in a Tottenham dugout with all the flamboyancy of them cockerels crowing all over the place.
Although I will say this, I've got the healthiest respect. I think Arsenal's a magnificent football club.
Yes.
I think the way they conduct their business, the way they run the club, the way everything's appointed, I think they're brilliant. Yeah. That would probably have been the one, I would guess. Tottenham, yeah.
And then you did get your move abroad.
Oh, right.
You'd always been, or it seemed that there was an itching. I think as an Englishman, you'd quite like to go and ply your trade abroad to see how it gets on. Atletico Madrid come calling. One Jesus Jill, you had another nickname for him, didn't you?
Mad Max. And I got on all right with him. It was quite funny, really. When I went, we were bottom but one. When I left, we were 2 points behind Real Madrid at the top of the league, and it was like being in a movie, I got to tell you. It was like being in a soap opera. But it was great. I got on great with the players, got on great with the public and the press, and I actually got on well with the president, but I don't know. I might have upset one or two of his minions.
Yeah.
Who sort of, we used to have a translator who... I got a command of how to take training sessions and things like that and whatever. But I would never do a press conference. Terry Venables told me that.
Yeah.
He said, never do your press conference without your translator. Because one word gets thrown all over the place. So I used to do that. And I can remember playing somebody. We were playing, who were we playing? We were playing Osasuna. And they had Michael Robinson, he used to be at Liverpool, and Sammy Lee was playing. And first half, he was murdering us. Michael Robinson was murdering us, And I'm going, I can't believe this. I said, I've had reserve team players put him to bed. Anyway, so at half time, I got hold of the 2 centre halves and I've gone to the translator. Right, tell them they've got to be stronger in the air.
Yeah.
They've got to go and see him off because he's intimidating them. And he sort of went, tell the mister says he wants you to head the ball. I went, right. So I grabbed hold of the pair of them and said, hey, Sergio, Luis Garcia, hey, muy forte, cuando que better entiendo, sí, yeah. And I made them jump. And I said, not mister, once you head the ball. But he became the translator thought he was a star. He thought, and the doctor started giving interviews, and I'm thinking, and whether they just put a little bit of a knife in, I really don't know. But all I know is that I enjoyed it, and I'd intended to go back there, not to Madrid.
Yeah.
But I'd got offers from Sevilla and Valencia. But when I came back, and then Sheffield Wednesday were in trouble, they offered me the job there. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, I can only do it for 3 months because I'm going to go back. Excuse me. I'm going to go back to Spain. But subsequently, I stayed there for, nearly 3 years. Because I enjoyed it that much, so I didn't go back in the end.
Jesus Gill and Deadly Doug, both chairmen with a certain reputation. Jesus Gill, he'd fired more managers than I've had.
I was his longest serving manager, I think.
What was you there, about 12 months?
No, 4 months.
Blimey.
Oh, yeah, he sacked one manager for smiling on the team photo.
Oh, dear.
I think he had something like, I don't know. He had about 15 managers in 2 seasons. But it was a great experience. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I got on great with the players. Yeah.
Did you speak Spanish? You've just revealed a little bit of Spanish.
No, I could get by in a training session.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, the guy who's just died, Luis Aragones, who'd been a manager at Atletico Madrid, his son used to be my teacher.
Oh, right.
But we used to go in, I'd find out more talking to the people, going in bars and that. Yeah, it was good though, really good, yeah.
In Coventry City, you on Sky famously had the row with Keys and Gray. Andy was your assistant, wasn't he, at Aston Villa? And you were absolutely right in what you were saying. The man of the match was their goalkeeper.
Yeah.
So you tell me, guys. And
yeah, that was a thing. Yeah, it was something, nothing. But where it was, and I didn't realise it had made such an impact.
Oh, it did.
But where it was funny, when we finished, it was, what's his name, Shrevesy.
Yeah. Was doing
the interview, Jeff Shreves, who the day before had been in my house having a drink.
Yeah.
And so I took the headphones off and just lobbed them across to him. And then I thought I'd caught him, so I stepped across the camera to say, "You all right?" "Yeah, no problem." I walk away and I'll forget all about it. People thought I'd gotten to chin him. And there was nothing of the sort. And it went till I walked in the big lounge at Southampton and people started clapping and well done. I'm thinking, what's going on here? I hadn't a clue. And then Andy rang me, he said, "I've told Casey, if he ever does that to me again, I'll..." Anyway, it all blew over. Yeah.
I think with Richard Keys, because he was a Coventry supporter as well, he probably let his passion come through.
Big saying it, but no, it was something, nothing. That.
And the commentating, you still are my favourite analysis person.
I was good, yeah, there's no question, I was good. Anyway.
you almost had a language of your own. It was called Runglish.
Oh, yeah.
In the Coleman Balls League of Fame, I think you're currently 4th. You could lighten up the most boring of games with a quiff or two. The Wide Awake Club,
I used to go to games. I used to do it. What I did. When I first went into it, nobody was doing it really properly.
Yeah,
they were just reiterating what the commentator said, and they do a 5-minute thing or 5-second thing for half time before the end.
Mm-hmm.
Now the guy that put me in was a guy named Paul Doherty, who was the best guy I ever met in television.
Yeah,
and he was hard. And a lot of people, Martin Tyler started with him, Clive Tilsley started with him, a lot of people started with him, but he was very critical.
Mm-hmm.
He really was. He'd say, "I don't want you telling me what the commentators told me. I want you to make observations. I want you to tell me how the game's going to develop. I want you to give me tactical information."
Mm-hmm.
And then because he knew what I was like, he said, "But, you use your own brand."
Yeah.
Because he once told, Trevor Francis came on board as well once, and Trevor asked him, "How am I doing?" He said, "Trevor, don't know why you ever try to be funny, because you're not."
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So that was what I did. But I took on board a lot from... I watched Richie Benno and Peter Ellis, the way they commentate on their various sports, and I think I took a bit off of them, I try to give people an insight into what goes on.
Yeah.
and you talk about the sayings. A lot of the sayings are actual coaching things that we use on coaching grade.
Yeah.
You know, where you can't be saying, you pick your right foot up and pick your left foot up and then tuck it over the ball. You just say, hey, come on, give me a lollipop.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're off. Or little flick head or little eyebrows, you know. Things like that. They were the sort of things. But they were used more for, like, players that play for me knew what I wanted, you know, because I'd go, well, and to be fair, I think the public caught on. You know, the public realised what a lollipop was.
Yeah, exactly. You educated us into these phrases.
Yeah.
Mind you, back in the 50s, you were educated as well. Was it Tap Tap, one of your coaches?
We had a brilliant... Jimmy Hogan was a legend.
Yes, definitely. Let's just talk about Jimmy Hogan firstly, because he was an absolute ledge.
When I went to the Villa, and it was revolutionary then, because Wolves were a great side, but there's a big emphasis on Wolves physically fit.
Yeah.
They actually employed a physical trainer. Mm-hmm. Not a trainer, but a physical trainer, an athlete. Because their game was to be as fit as, you know, there was a value in it. Mm-hmm. When I went to the Villa, they got in charge of the young players, they got a guy named Jimmy Hogan, who'd coached the great Hungarian sides, Puskás and all that, and the great Austrian side before that. And he'd managed Villa before the war, been very successful when the war was over and whatever. He'd worked a lot in Eastern Europe. And they brought him back to the Villa as a teacher, I think. Mm-hmm. And when we were training, everything was done with a ball. We'd be running up and down the field or the car park or whatever with a ball, inside, outside, turn, twist, switch on. We were playing sort of 1 and 2 touch football. And it was at the time quite revolutionary. Mm-hmm. You get in the reserves, this is what used to make us laugh. I mean, there were players in the reserves that were 24, 25 years of age and never got in the first team, like, you know. Yeah. But you get in there, and the trainer there, Phil, it was a character, flat cap, the epitome of what a trainer was supposed to look like in those days. Yeah. He was, he'd go, forget what Tip Tap's told you. He used to give it some altitude. The young players, we used to be in stitches, like, you know, because we all respected Jimmy. Yeah. Or Uncle Jimmy, as Ferenc Puskás, no less, called him.
I mean, that Hungarian team, as we said earlier in the interview, the Wolves versus Honvéd game, that was a propaganda game, wasn't it? Because Hungary had won, you know, the Hungarian league and battered England, and Wolverhampton Wanderers were the English champions. Yeah. Let's get a game together to see who is the best, whether it is still the English or whether it's the Hungarians. And then in Paris, after that, they decided, well, let's have a competition to see who's the greatest in Europe, and hence the European Cup in the... what do you prefer, European Cup or Champions League?
I still call it the European Cup.
Well, I do,
I mean, I know why they've got the league basis, because the more teams are in it and there's more money to be made through the television revenue and so forth. Yeah. And I think in a way they think by doing that it pacifies the big clubs in Europe, the G14s, who want to have this breakaway European league. Yeah. They said that pacifies them. But I used to like it when it was head-to-head. All right, if that's got to be like that, fine. What I can't take is the Europa Cup.
Yes.
That should be, when it was the UEFA Cup, it was a great tournament. But it should be that now again on a knockout basis. Yeah. And not dropping teams down from the top division, you know, when they get knocked out of the one competition to go into that. It should be set in stone. And, all right, you can seed teams. So, by and large, you get the best teams through to the final stages. But I think that should be knockout. There's so many games. I'll be honest, I'll watch football any time it's on, but I won't very often have that Thursday night. Yeah. You know, I look at them and I think, unless there's a great game on Tottenham against an Ajax or something, you might go, I'll have some of that. But nah, not when teams I've never heard of. Yeah. I think they've made names up to play in the tournament. Metalisk or somewhere.
And I think as well, when you're looking at Tottenham in the Europa League, whatever you want to call it, they tend to field a substandard side in that as well. Yeah. The travelling, again, the Thursday night seems to be a stupid night to play football because you've got your Saturday. I know they hang the games over for the Sunday, but the travelling, it just seems, you know, ridiculous. It used to be a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night in the old days with the European Cup. Your heroes, Ron. Who's your big heroes in the game?
Well, when I was a kid, I used to love Albert Quixel, Sheffield Wednesday. because he was in the England team when he was 18, blonde wavy hair, rolled his shorts right up and, juggled the ball a bit. I love Billy Wright. I thought Billy Wright was one of the best men I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
Duncan Edwards would probably have been my all-time favourite. I remember seeing him play at St Andrews for England schoolboys when he was 2 years younger than everybody and was easily... He ploughed through the mud at St Andrews one day and he looked like a 20-year-old playing with the kids. He was unbelievable. People like Stanley Matthews were phenomenal. Stanley Matthews was unbelievable. You know, it was like theatre watching him. He was just sensational. John Charles, I think, was tremendous. Big John. He was the best centre-half I've ever seen and one of the best 3 centre-forwards I've ever seen.
And again, one of the first English players to go out and win the Scudetto for Juve.
I mean, he's still a legend in Italy now.
It must have been that good, because I remember asking you a question a few years ago, and you said, look, if you could have a machine and it would churn out the perfect football play with all the ingredients, it would come out as John Charles.
Comes out as John Charles.
But he was a lovely man as well, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. Quite a simple guy, right? I don't mean that, he got no edge to him.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember being in a restaurant with some of the Villa lads. In fact, I've had it twice happen. Once some of the Villa lads, younger Villa lads, and they were being a bit, I thought a bit disrespectful, did they? And I pulled them. I said, hey, by the way, he is better than any 4 of you in this room put together. And I remember being with Big Norman Whiteside, and Norman had 1 or 2 drinks at a function one night, and Norman was, and I said, hey, you, shut up. See you. And Robbo was with us.
Yeah.
I said, he's better than you and Robbo put together.
Was he really? Or was you just... Oh,
no, he was.
Definitely.
Phenomenal. Phenomenal player. Yeah.
I mean, he was known as El Rey, which is...
the king.
Exactly. And even the Torino fans called him the king as well.
He was unbelievable. But, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that you've done in recent times. I mean, you're still doing the Willie Mill with Robbie Savage?
Yeah.
How's that going?
Goes all right. I'm having a bad year this year. I should have won it last year. I lost on the last day when Man City only had to beat Norwich at home for me to be the winner. And they went and got beat. And I've not had a proper winner since then. Savage is romping it this year. He's just sticking pins in and they're coming up.
How'd you get on with Rob? I mean, as football fans look at him, he's a bit of a wind-up, but Savage has always been like that. On the pitch, he was a wind-up. Yeah. As a manager, you'd want someone like that in your team, wouldn't you?
If he could play.
Well, that's your problem. You would have had Rob in your Man United team in your day, but...
When he gets... He's all right, Rob, he's a good kid, but when he gets a bit heavy, you go, hang on, Robson, Muram, Wilkins, Moses, Strachan, Sheridan... I start going through them and I think, nah, there wouldn't be. Then I go Paolo Futri and all that later. Nah, 20. That's you're not in my top 20 midfield players, Rob.
And you have worked with some world-class players. Who would you put as the best player that you've ever...
Well, it's not an argument. Not an argument.
No, it's Robbo.
Robbo. Not an argument.
Yeah.
Robbo for me is the nearest I've seen to Duncan Edwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, no Robbo. The only player that comes near to him in that respect, Roy Keane did.
Yeah. Roy
Keane did, to be fair, although I thought Robbo could score better and had a better, possibly, tactical appreciation of the game. But there's not a hair's breadth with them, but Robbo was a better player. And the only other one's Dave Mackay.
Broke both his legs as well, didn't he, Dave Mackay?
Dave Mackay was sensational.
Come back from that. Now, there was a bit of a twist of irony, wasn't there, with you signing Brian Robson for Manchester United. You was after Mark Lawrenson, wasn't you? And Liverpool...
We were after we're after a few. We're after Mark Lawrenson. But the prime target was always Robbo.
Yeah.
Always. From the minute I left the club, it was always Robbo. But I tried for Mark Lawrenson. He got in a funny situation and Liverpool stepped in and they bought him anyway. But the irony of all that was I probably wouldn't have been able to afford Robbo if I'd have bought Lawrenson. Because we had to finance the deals, we had to... I had to sell to buy and do this and that, like, you know. It's like later on, people ask me regrets, and there's always what could have happened. I mean, the one I should have had at Man U later on was Lineker.
Yeah.
Who we got lined up. Lineker was stitched on.
Mm.
But I had to sell one of the strikers first, and in that period, Howard stepped in. Sold Andy Gray to the Villa and stepped in.
Now the England job, Ron. Famously, England tend to go with managers that fit the criteria, fit the FA blazer and badge and so on and so forth. You were, and still are, one of the most decorated English managers. Brian Clough would have been another fan's favourite.
Yeah.
I'm guessing out of, if you was to ask a collection of, like, you know, family fortunes, we've asked 100 English football fans, who'd you like to have had a manager that didn't manage the England national team? Big Ron and Brian Clough would definitely be in that top 5.
Possibly,
all day long.
Well, I got sounded out about it when Graham finished. Yeah, when Graham finished. But to be fair, Jimmy Armfield was doing like an ombudsman thing. And I know that he asked 4 or 5 of what would be considered then the leading English managers. And I, not tongue-in-cheek, but I did say, because they got 2 games left in qualifying, I think. I said, I'll do it on a part-time basis.
Yeah.
At that moment in my career, I wasn't particularly interested. I like, you know, I preferred big club management.
Yeah.
Later on, maybe it would have been all right, but at the time, big club management was more, you know, every day and whatever, and hands-on thing and all that. See, I think Glenn Hoddle, who did all right actually, not bad, did all right. I think he took it much too early. McLaren took it definitely too early. You know, the perfect scenario might have been somebody like when Bobby Robson was, or somebody like Ron Greenwood when they took it. Yeah.
Brian Clough, most people say he would have been the greatest England manager ever. England should have had Brian Clough. If they got the bottle to have had Brian Clough.
You know what I think with Cloughie?
Yeah.
I think we should have had a manager to get us there, like Ron Greenwood did to Spain.
Yeah.
Got us to Spain. And then, I know it's hard and I know it's difficult, and then Cloughie should have been put in charge for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
4 weeks. I think then you'd have seen the best of Cloughie. I don't think he could have dealt with the day-to-day stuff of committees and stuff like that, which the England manager, to a certain extent, has to do. He couldn't have dealt with that, Cloughie, to go.
Do you think they should do, Ron, or do you think they should just pick the team, motivate the team, and make the team win a game of football?
Well, I think that's the main that's the main thing. That's what you have to do mainly. But there are other responsibilities that come with it. Would come with the job, like, you know, and you know, you're supposed to be looking over what goes on in coaching schemes and things like that. That is an expectancy you'd have to do. I mean, but for me, the prime responsibility is to win football matches.
I think at any level of the game, that's the bottom line. Do you think that the England game, the national team manager should be English, or the best person that's available to do the job? Yeah,
I've always thought it wouldn't worry me who was manager if we were winning.
Yeah,
but I think by and large, it should be English. You know, if for argument's sake, Wenger became available and we needed a manager, and you know, I wouldn't have a problem with Arsene Wenger if he was keen enough. I mean, Wenger's always said that he didn't want the England job. You know, for obvious reasons. He'd get a load of Frenchmen in the team anyway. He doesn't have English players. Well, he's got a few now, to be fair. No, I think by and large it should be English. I tell you, one of the best things I've heard recently. You talk about that. Gary Pendry, who's one of my best mates, a great lad, one of the best blokes I've ever met. Gary Pendry, who's worked with Gordon Strachan for a long time. Gordon Strachan offered him the number 2 job for Scotland.
Oh, right.
And Gary said, no, don't want it.
Yeah.
He said, because the Scottish team should be full of Scottish people.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought it was quite a sacrifice, actually. I told him he was mad. But he always has been anyway.
Yeah, as I say, another great mate of yours. And you took him to West Brom from Birmingham, about 40 grand you collared out for him, didn't we?
There's a lovely story. I mean, I see Gary nearly every week at St Andrews. And he tells the story like the first day we're training, playing 8-a-side, 2-touch or 3-touch. And the ball comes to Gary, gets on his left foot and tries to ping a long ball, which goes astray. And I called all the lads in to a big circle. And I said, listen, son, I don't know what you've done at your other club, but at this club, when we get the ball, we pass to each other, okay? Well, Gary went, I could have. Yeah, great lad, proper chap.
Another proper chap in the game, and your careers at our two Birmingham clubs, Aston Villa and Birmingham City, you were there for the same period, probably about a year. Barry Fry.
Oh, he's mad.
You offered him a job once, didn't you?
Did I?
I believe so.
Must have been cleaning my car.
I think it was similar to that. Barry was out of work. I think Flashman had sacked him, because he sacked him every other week, didn't he? And you were watching a game with Barry, and you says, Barry, do you want a job? And yeah, Gaffer, I'll have a job. But do you really want a job? Yeah, I do. Go and get the teas in.
I know, yeah. Barry, I can remember my first game. Well, not my first game, but maybe second game as a player manager for Kettering.
Yeah.
We were playing Bedford Town in the Southern League Cup or something. And I'm marking Barry.
Yeah.
And all through the game, he's trying to tap me up to join me. And I said, Barry, I don't fancy you, but I'll have the other midfield player. And I did. Took the other mate, yeah. God, some character him. Some man, Barry.
He was different classes, no? Larger than life, like yourself, could lighten up any room. The press in Birmingham must have loved the time when you were both in the city.
I rang him up, when he'd been there. I said, hey, do yourself a favour. Who invited you onto the back page? I said, I'm getting a bit annoyed. You're getting more column inches than me. Behave yourself.
He was a great signing for Birmingham City, though, at the time, wasn't he?
Yeah.
You know, we needed someone to...
make sure they went down.
Well, put a smile on our face, I was going to say, Ron.
Yeah, here it is.
But even when Barry got us relegated, he turned round, he said, well, I said to me, Gaffer, I'd get you out of the division.
Yeah.
And true to his word, Barry Fry did. Celebrity Big Brother, you had a brief outing in the...
yeah.
I mean, I watched that. Some of the people in there, they just... You know, people were saying, Ron wasn't very talkative in there. If you'd have put Gabbie in there, Gabbie wouldn't have been very talkative. There weren't many people that I could relate to in there, and I'm sure that you were very, very similar.
Well, I went in another circumstance. I could have slapped a few of them, but I just went in and went, sun's shining.
Yeah.
I'm getting well looked after.
Yeah.
Yeah, this will do me. Get in, get the money and get out. Yeah.
When you lined up, you had to do your party piece, because music is a big part of you, and Frank Sinatra, and you're all lined up, and that Geordie Bird that actually went on and won it, my jaw dropped when I saw her party piece. It was something like drinking alcohol, getting absolutely drunk, and then throwing up. I thought, my word. And then when it was Ron, I actually tweeted at the time, Ron will sing That's Life. No, and true to you did. Frank Sinatra, big hero of yours, big fella, I know.
That's right. What I should have done, I hadn't really taken that much notice of what was going on.
Yeah.
And I think, I'll tell you what, I got on well with the lad Abs out of 5, innit?
Yes.
I got on well with him.
Yeah.
And he said afterwards, I thought you'd have done like a team talk. I said, I could have done that. Because I'd have had like Louis Spence. I said, I want you skipping down that wing. I could have done that at the end. That would have been, And that Carol McGiffin, I said, you're captain because you're that gobby. You can be captain. All right.
I mean, Louis Spence, he'd have drove me bar, mate.
He was an evil little man. That Ryland, who I used to watch on that X Factor and want to throw things at him.
Yeah.
When I got to meet him, he was all right.
Yeah, apparently he is, yeah.
He was all right, and because they'd been on with Razor Ruddock and Frankie Dettori, who I'd spoken to before I went on, and Razor said, Ron, it's like, it'll be a stroll in the park for you. Anyway, I said, he asked me, he said, we're talking about one or two off the record, like, he said, I said, go on, what about Louis? He said, he's evil. It's him. He said he was my dance teacher. He said he made my life a misery.
Oh, right.
But what they didn't know, I'd actually seen who was in the show. I was watching it on the television when I shouldn't have been, and I knew who was in, and I knew who was hiding.
Yeah.
So I'd heard Louis say one or two things about me when he was supposed to, when he didn't know.
Oh, right.
So when I went in, he said I wouldn't have 2 words to say to Ron. So I kept engaging him in conversation. I kept saying, Louis, you still practicing? Still doing it? And he couldn't talk.
Yeah.
He like pulled away, like, you know, and I'm winding him up deliberately. Then, yeah, it was alright.
Would you go on another reality TV show again? Have you done that? That's it. Wouldn't do it again.
I'd consider. I'd look at it for a like.
Yeah.
It was.
What one would you like to do?
I'll tell you what, I fancy a bit more than I did. I never used to, and yet the more I look at it, I might fancy the jungle.
Really?
Yeah, I might fancy that. Yeah.
Would you like to be jumped out that aeroplane though?
I mean, that's.
Would it not?
Nah. Hey, RAF man, me, you know.
Oh, were you, Ron?
Oh, that was at RAF Abingdon where they taught the paratroopers. Don't worry about that. That wouldn't bother me, though.
That'd be a great birthday present at 75. I mean, Ant and Dec, if you're listening to this, get the big man in the jungle.
Yeah.
Who would you like to go in the jungle with if you could pick, say, 2 or 3? Because, I mean, they're not going to.
I'll tell you that what disappointed me in that house. Mm-hmm. I thought there'd been a lot more banter, a lot more fun.
Yeah.
And there wasn't, so I've gone, all that silly late night drinking and screaming and shit. I thought, oh, idiots. But I thought, you know, 1 or 2, like I said, Abs, I had a bit to do with him and, off Coronation Street, Bruce.
Yeah.
But I was led to believe there'd be a lot more banter. Because I think when Ray Ruddock was in it, he was in with Frankie Dettori and 1 or 2 more.
Sports people.
And they all had a bit of banter, like, you know. And, well, when I watched this I didn't watch it, but what I heard about this last one, pretty horrific, wasn't it?
Yeah, they come in there and they were handcuffed together and stuff. But I just
Maggie said to me, don't you fall in out with anybody. I said, okay, I won't. I'll just go in there and just say how you doing and all that, like. And I'm looking at 1 or 2. I thought, you clown. I mean, even that girl that won it, that Charlotte, when she was around me, she was all right. I kept saying, you behave yourself. Yeah. And she was great with me, like, but she did get into some other silly stuff.
Oh, I couldn't. I mean, like Geordie Shore. I mean, it's a lot of what the kids watch and that, but it's not my bag. It's not what I can relate to. And
my grandkids loved that show, and they loved the. In fact, my grandson came on it when I came off Ollie. Yeah, and they loved it. I mean, have you seen that picture, The Wolf of Wall Street? No. They all love that. It's scandalous.
Not silly.
Oh, it's scandalous. It's nothing but shagging and drug taking and all. It's horrible. And I'm going, nah. But you talk to any youngster, brilliant.
Yeah. Sadly, I think a reflection of our days now. Yeah. Imagine that back in the 50s or the 60s, a film like that. It just wouldn't have happened, would it? You wouldn't have got it. I mean, the music industry, there's a lot of some of the lyrics in the music now. I think it's pure filth. Yeah. It's gone dark. When we started, when it was light. We're both a little bit Gabbie. Ron, can I just say thank you very much for your time.
No problem.
Really appreciate it.
No problem.
And happy birthday.
Muchas gracias, muchas gracias. Enhorabuena. Cumpleaños para mí, ¿sí?
Thanks. Cheers, Ron. Thanks, big fella.